Everyone, Carasoft Technology would like to welcome you to our webinar today. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few agenda items. All of your lines have been muted to reduce background noise, and we hope you take advantage of the Q&A pod on the left side of your screen. We will do our best to answer all of your questions at the end of the presentation. If for some reason we do not get to your questions, we will follow up with you offline. Carasoft is a trusted government IT solutions provider, delivering software and support solutions to federal, state, and local government agencies. Carasoft maintains dedicated teams to support sales and marketing for all of its vendors, including Splunk, Cumulus, Forescout, AWS, VMware, and EMC. Our contact information will be at the end of the presentation, so please don't hesitate to call or email us for any of your needs. This webinar is being recorded, and a copy of it will be emailed to you. At this time, I would like to introduce our speakers for today, Bruce Johnson and Matthew Clemens. Gentlemen, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, China. My name is Bruce Johnson. I'm the Director of Enterprise Security for TekStream, and Matt Clemens, my cohort, actually manages the BU for us. He's the Managing Director for our Splunk practice, which is by far and away our most involved and growing practice within TekStream. We do an awful lot of other things, around Oracle and AWS and a variety of different platforms. But we're here today to talk a little bit about remote work insights. We've got an Accelerator package that we've put together around remote work insights, largely because we don't see this changing. Remote work insights is an application that was kind of introduced in the Splunk world immediately after COVID. It actually, I think the beginnings of it were initiated in March, and early versions of it were available in April. But we have not seen much in terms of a change that it would indicate that we are going back to solely on-premises work. I know that's true for our company, and it's true for most of our customers at this point. The kind of diaspora of employees is to work from home has brought up a lot of challenges for us. So in terms of the the threat surface that we have to deal with in terms of the infrastructure scaling and so forth, those kinds of problems are not going away. The problems are multiple, particularly on the security side. Obviously, the threat surface in March for our customers changed dramatically when we had to consider an at-home work environment with a variety of different, maybe sometimes non-sanctioned devices logging into the environment, and then stressing our our infrastructure on through the VPN, through all of the authentication mechanisms, and through all of the different IOCs or threat patterns that we were seeing, as well as now the introduction or the escalation of internal threats from some of the more recent, like SolarWinds, FireEye types of attacks, that really both sides of the coin have put a lot of emphasis or a lot of change for us in terms of the IOCs that we're looking for, in terms of the threats that we're looking for. Fundamentally, in the first series that we talked about remote work insights, our emphasis a few months ago was on scaling, and that included things like tunneling network traffic that was going to the cloud and routing that so it didn't have to go through the local VPN, or even scaling up VPN environments in AWS. We had a number of techniques in the context of that discussion to scaling physical infrastructure, and this is really just reviewing the remote work insights application and series of dashboards from Splunk. Again, available in Splunk base if you want to actually look for it directly, and the bundles that we put together to enable it if you want to move something like that into production, regardless of what environment, whether it's on-prem or AWS or Splunk Cloud. So the kinds of drivers for us obviously was in adoption or justification of remote work insights as an application were our ability to surface the infrastructure, the productivity, the interconnectedness of now a remote workforce, and the ability to surface threats that were now new attacks new techniques that were coming from home environment and now obviously behind the firewall. So the remote work insight was kind of a response to all of that, making sure that our employees could remain connected and productive and didn't miss a beat in terms of their productivity working from home. And that certainly has been the case for TekStream. We found a lot of actual productivity improvements in the move from on-prem to remote work. So, done right, remote work has actually provided a lot of latitude for our employees and their own work situations, as well as increasing productivity. But this remote work infrastructure application is really designed to monitor whether or not the corporation is being responsive to the employees. Do we provide the infrastructure that's scaling, and can we monitor that? So obviously, it's not a passing trend. Most organizations are turning in their brick and mortar to one degree or another, and scaling their infrastructure to enable or support remote work. Obviously, the challenge to people logging in through our VPN or through new authentication mechanisms is a functional problem, but it's also a process problem. So our ability to scale up and support our customers from a process problem from a process or visibility perspective is commensurate with the scaling of the infrastructure to support them. So a few clips, obviously you guys are all aware of, breaches that have come from the outside. Obviously now that a lot of the focus that we've had from most of our customers have been on kind of hardening that shell around the organization. Now customers or threats are coming from that GUI center, right? They're coming from the inside as well. So more IOCs start to be important, like lateral movement or data exfil, those types of use cases. But certainly from a security perspective, the threat surface changing to incorporate things that are beyond our control and locking down those environments to ensure that we're controlling the device types. Not everyone at home has a firewall or even has sufficient infrastructure. So those kinds of processes and challenges really compounded over the past year what we had to monitor from an infrastructure ops and security perspective. So the challenges that the media are kind of surfacing that are directly related to that changing threat surface involve new threats. Obviously, these metrics don't include the SolarWinds scenarios, and that isn't necessarily specific to remote work insights anyway. Data breaches, obviously, all of these areas are growing. So while the infrastructure is being stressed, the types of threats are only getting higher. So I know most of you, like me, are not sleeping as much as we used to. So, all this evolving while everything has to stay up. The Remote Work Insights app allows us to give kind of real-time visibility across different orthogonal views of the enterprise, which includes user constituents, geographies, and infrastructure layers or tiers. And I'll go into a demo later to show you what that looks like. The way in which we've kind of augmented what is out of the box with the Remote Work Insights application, and again, you can download that yourself if you're interested. The executive dashboard of the report on Splunk-based is readily available, as is the add-on, which I can show you in a second. What we've done is really bundled these with out-of-the-box apps that have expanded upon the initial apps that were rolled out with Remote Work Insights to include a variety of different environments. We've expanded, support for Zoom, for instance, from what was initially offered in Remote Work Insights, and a lot of these VPN solutions, firewall solutions, collaboration, social media, Slack, Zoom, WebEx, types of platforms, as well as more authentication environments, Okta, Duo, and SailPoint. We've expanded on what is kind of out of the box and configured within the kind of packages that we've put together. So all of those kind of apps, if you've got them, are included as potential sources within our bundle. And then there are a variety. Every time we help customers to implement this beyond the initial implementation, it immediately starts to expand to AWS Cloud, for instance, or Azure, or more sophisticated, environments or solutions. So what we have from a remote work infrastructure perspective is largely, out of the box, focused on these apps and some rudimentary, if you will, or initial operational monitoring of that environment to ensure connectivity, scaling, productivity, interactivity through the social media apps. So that initial solution very quickly starts to expand beyond those bounds and includes additional data sources, which we can accommodate if we need to, if we just have a discussion in terms of what's important to you. So basically what it is the RWI Accelerator package that we're offering includes basically, all of the applications and dependencies and TAs that enable the solution. Implementation services, obviously, so we are implementing this in your environment, which includes, some level of provisioning, obviously. Splunk Cloud, that's much less so, but obviously AWS or on-prem environments include some level of provisioning. Hands-on training with the application as well as the underlying dependent apps. Technical support to provide ongoing support after production. That's one of the things that for TekStream is kind of a hallmark of pretty much everything that we do, because we provide so many, let's say a varied portfolio of services for our customers that cover the entire life cycle of Splunk, from, finding resources if you're looking for resumes on the market to, implementing or selling, even bundling the software, bundling the technology and to enable it, implementing the software, as well as, at post-implementation support. And certainly we, provide support services in many cases white labeled with Splunk to support their environment or their services as well. So we find ourselves really the full gamut of services, and we tend to include that kind of technical support post-implementation to continually optimize as a kind of a de facto part of all of our implementation services. And then really this is kind of the pricing options. Matt, anything to say here in terms of the bundles?
Yeah, Bruce, I think you covered it well. I mean, AWS Marketplace, you see on the bottom left there is we're seeing more and more customers wanting to go that route to have a smooth purchasing process. They're kind of focusing some of their buying in that format, and that's something that we do all the time and can accommodate. And yeah, I mean, we're just trying to keep it simple and flexible in terms of how to get customers up and started quickly with that rapid time to value, knowing that the use cases that you would use the solution and software for could grow over time, right? But depending on your specific scenario, typically you find that this, the small, medium, large T-shirt size approach that you see here is a good rule of thumb. So, but know that over time the solution can grow with you, or if you need something custom in terms of sizing that you don't see here.
And then we have some kind of package
as well.
Sizing in the sales process to be able to enable that as well, right, Matt?
That's correct. That's correct.
So,
yeah, we can turn those kinds of things around really quickly.
Cool. Thank you, Matt. So, in general, what TekStream is providing is, as I said, a variety of different solutions and services to enable, cloud solutions, platform and infrastructure services. If you're looking for MSP or outsourcing the managed services of a Splunk environment, you're not using Splunk Cloud, let's say, we provide those types of services. Business process automation, high-level workflow services, user experience, portal development kinds of things, cybersecurity and infrastructure monitoring as well if you want to outsource your SOC, and obviously the cloud scripting, implementation, infrastructure management. We do this for a variety of different customers, so we kind of have a pretty broad footprint in terms of digital transformation. And as I said before, we cover kind of the whole life cycle, if you will, of owning a Splunk problem, from making sure you're optimizing your purchase decision with Splunk, to the services necessary to stand it up, the services necessary to support it, and even the sourcing to be able to find you qualified individuals to service your Splunk environment. And of course, that kind of the gamut of those types of solutions or business processes are supported in a variety of different technology environments, Splunk being one of them, but we also include cloud services, and portal services and services for Oracle infrastructure, et cetera. So this is kind of the picture for what TekStream does for a living. Maybe I'll give you a short look into the the RWI demo if you haven't seen that before. It really kind of focuses on the executive dashboard. As I said before, go to Splunk Base if you're interested in RWI, and you can type in RWI, the executive dashboard, as well as the add-on for it. Supporting add-on for it are available in Splunk Base. This is essentially what you get. The add-on has a bit more in terms of scripting specifically for Zoom environments. If you're using Zoom, that's kind of a necessary piece, as well as some data model extensions and rudimentary kind of transformation stuff. So both of those might be necessary or applicable for your environment. And of course, we install those as a part of the standard infrastructure for this app. The executive dashboard is really kind of segregating everything in terms of, the infrastructure. Are we scaling on the VPN side to be able to support the overall volume? Are the users getting to the applications that they need to get to in order to do their work and maybe productive? And then, are they able to interact through video conferencing platforms or Slack and those types of things? So those are kind of the three standard views, if you will, or organized views of remote work insights, remote infrastructure monitoring. And then this executive dashboard is just summarizing, how many active VPN sessions do I have, how many Zoom meetings are going on, what is the most popular app today, and obviously my information is, because I just spun up this demo a few hours ago, it's somewhat truncated. You can drill down on some of these to look at more detailed dashboards. So if I wanted to look, for instance, at my overall infrastructure connectivity through VPN, I could drill down on a specific day, and it will basically map my IP addresses to lat long, so I can see where, from a geographic perspective, people are logging in, by country, city. Splunk, as you know, or most of you have any familiarity with Splunk, is incredibly flexible in terms of the way that it slices and dices and correlates information on the fly. So any of this is infinitely modifiable the minute you start using it. When we look at kind of global activities versus drilling down, that's kind of common to all of these other dashboard environments. Authentication, if I'm worried about more than just infrastructure, I'm worried about, either trends in terms of my authentication volumes, or, specifics for which app is getting authentication events. Everything in my infrastructure can be grabbed by Splunk if it authenticates and thrown into this environment. So, my workstations authenticate, my server authenticate, my database authenticate, my software, my SSO or my SAML authenticates, my LDAP. All of this information can be brought to bear in this authentication view. And then normally I would trellis this view. If you don't have a ton of applications, it's better to look at maybe on a trend line, each one of these applications individually. But certainly, very valuable information in terms of who's logging in where. And then subdividing these maybe into LDAP groups might also be appropriate. When I look at then, specifics around Okta, for instance, in this case, could be Duo, could be whatever you're using for authentication application. We can start to subdivide those categories into, what device are people using, what browsers. Then if you wanted to drill down on that further to see, what the authentication metrics are by device or browser, we can do that. And then the number of users by application in this case. So, if obviously you could color code this table if your users drop below a certain threshold for a given app, you probably want to highlight that. And then finally, kind of are my, so the first question is my infrastructure related, mostly VPN and firewall stuff. Authentication, are people getting through beyond just getting onto my environment? Are they getting the app? And then video conferencing is just how well are they able to interact with one another. So then, I'm looking at maybe the meeting times, the number of people, the average number of people per meeting, in this case, pretty small, not a lot of large meetings going on. So that's some of the, RWI, solution from Splunk, and at a very high level, what you do to start with, if you will, as a part of the Remote Work Insights and our Accelerator package. So that was pretty much, I think, all that we had to share today.
Yeah, and Bruce, this is Matt. Couple of questions that popped up that I want to throw over to you. So one, there's a question about the platform as a whole. You'd mentioned Splunk Cloud and AWS. Maybe talk a little bit about the question is directly, is this a SaaS product? You also mentioned AWS. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I think I mentioned before, where we implement the product itself is somewhat immaterial. In this case, we're kind of set up to do this via AWS Marketplace. It's kind of a great default. But where you implement the RWI solution is somewhat independent of the platform that you're implementing on. You can download the application itself and install it in your on-prem environment if you already have a Splunk environment.
Gotcha. Okay, so it could be done on Splunk Cloud, which is more of a SaaS solution, or a DIY or DIY on AWS or on-prem. Okay.
Yeah.
Another question that we had here was you had mentioned about, obviously, that we're talking about RWI here. I think you mentioned some SIEM or SIM use cases earlier. Question is, what other use cases can I use this type of data for with Splunk?
Yeah, I mean, out of the box, there's kind of a data source analysis that we go through that can either look at it from a use case perspective or from a kind of a bottom-up data source. I have these data sources. What use cases can I support? So the security, there are both security and ops use cases that would follow on to a Remote Work Insights implementation, and they vary pretty widely, actually. And obviously the types of challenges vary by customer in terms of their ability to control how people are connecting and what remote infrastructure, what remote workstations and devices they can actually lock down to and manage, because the types of, the threat service, if you're not able to lock down and manage your remote workers, gets pretty varied in those use cases. Those IOCs are a little bit different in that scenario.
Gotcha, yeah. So the takeaway is think of it as this is an application that sits on top of a platform that you can use for remote workforce insights, security, operations, DevOps.
Yep. No, I see where you're going with that. Yep. It out of the box RWI focuses both on security and ops.
Gotcha. All right. I think that's it from the questions that I see. Appreciate you all joining. I think that's all we had for you. Of course, any questions that you'd like to ask offline, I think China's going to take us on the next steps with a call to action there. So China, I guess we'll pass it back to you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, guys. I'd also like to thank all of our participants for being with us today. We hope this webinar has been helpful for you and your organization. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded, and a copy of the presentation will be emailed to you. If we were unable to get to any of your questions, we will reach out to you offline to follow up. But if you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to contact the Splunk team at Carahsoft. Our contact information is displayed on your screen, so please don't hesitate to call or email us. But thank you all and have a good rest of your day.